Just like what we did in the previous lecture for this lesson, we are going to in-depthly talk about the qualitative methods. Okay? So last lecture video, ang ginawa natin doon talagang binigyan ko kayo ng mga specific examples how quantitative methods work. For this one, I'm going to talk about how qualitative research methods work. Remember, if you recall, in that short lecture I gave you about the difference between quanti and qualitative research, in qualitative methods, we use the following words. Describe experience, we go deeper. We want to know a person's perspective about something. We want to see the world in someone's eyes. And of course, in qualitative methods, we do a lot of interviewing and we listen to what our participants have to say. Ibang-iba yan sa quantitative methods. No? In quantitative methods, we don't interview, we don't listen to them, we compute the scores that they get from the instruments that we give them. So dito pa lang, makikita nyo na ibang-iba talaga yung quantitative from qualitative methods. Also, in the qualitative methods, we ask different questions. We ask what people think, how people feel, what is it like, how people deal with something. These are very different questions compared to the quantitative methods. In the quantitative methods, if you recall, the questions that we ask there is more on how much or how strong is the relationship is between the psychological variables. So dito pa lang, talagang kitang-kita nyo na ibang-iba yung mga tanong na sinasagot natin in qualitative methods. That's why I really hope that after this series of videos between quantitative methods and qualitative methods, you will be able to develop a skill in formulating a research question that is for quantitative methods to answer and questions that are for the qualitative methods to answer. So anyway, going back to qualitative methods, there are many ways on how to do qualitative research methods. No? You can do IPA or Interpretative Phenomenological Analysis. Pwede ka mag-grounded theory, FGD, narrative, case study, discursive analysis, or diary studies. But the essence of all these methods is gagawa ka talaga dito ng interview. Except I think for diary studies and discursive analysis. Pero in general, when you do qualitative methods, you are going to do a lot of interview. I think it will just all depend on how you are going to do the interview, because the interview will be done in different ways depending on which of the following are you going to use. So iba yung pag-i-interview kapag nag-grounded theory ka, iba yung pag-i-interview kapag nag-FGD ka, iba rin yung pag-i-interview kapag nagna-narrative ka. But again, in essence, all of these methods, except for discursive analysis and diary studies, all of these methods require the researcher to have good interviewing skills. Okay? So just like what we did in the quantitative methods, I am going to present to you sample studies, this time that were done using the qualitative approach. Let me present to you this interesting study about mistresses. This study was presented to me by a group of students that I handled before. So they would like to ask the question, what is it like to be someone's mistress? Very interesting question, no? So anyway, yung method nila dito is they interviewed 10 mistresses. Dun pa lang medyo impressive na yung effort ng mga students na ito, no? I mean, it is so hard for you to find someone who will accept that she is a mistress, no? But to make the long story short, this group was able to find 10 mistresses. Tapos in-interview nila yung 10 mistresses na ito, and then they transcribe their responses. By the way, that is a very important term in qualitative research, transcription or transcribing. Anong ibig sabihin nun? When you interview your participants, you are going to later on type all their responses word for word in a document, because that is where you are going to analyze the data. You need the transcriptions of the interview. So after interviewing these 10 mistresses, transcribe nila yung mga sinabi ng mga interviewees nila, and then from there, they spotted common responses that their mistresses gave from in answering their questions. In a more technical terms, ito yung tinatawag nating themes. themes. In qualitative research, we are after the common themes that we can see from the responses of our interviewees. And yung themes na yon, nanggagaling yon sa similarities or commonalities of the things that they are saying. So going back to this research topic, from those 10 mistresses na in-interview nila, hinanapan ng mga researchers ng mga common answers or ng mga common experiences yung na naranasan ng mga mistresses that they interviewed. So let me present to you some of these themes that they were able to form from analyzing the transcription. Number one, they were able to take note of how mistresses look at themselves. They discovered, for example, in the study that when mistresses undergo two phases in terms of their identity as mistresses. Merong silang denial phase and acceptance phase. The denial phase is a phase where they still deny that they are mistress. Doon daw pala sila nagsisimula, no? Deep inside, they know that they are a mistress. They know that they are being treated like a mistress. They know that the current setup of their relationship makes them a mistress, but they will not accept the label that they are a mistress. And the group explained this by saying that one of the reasons why they are denying that they are a mistress is because of our culture's stigma to mistresses. Kasi hindi talaga maganda sa pananaw ng lipunan yung mga mistresses. So, understandable, they don't like to accept the idea that they are actually a mistress. But as they go along the relationship, habang tumatagal yan, papasok sila sa acceptance phase. This is a phase where finally, they will accept. They will now be more open to the idea that they are indeed a mistress. So yan yung dalawang phase sa pinagdaraanan nila. I-deny muna nila yan, and then as the relationship goes on, there will come a time that they are now going to accept that they are a mistress. And also, another important idea that this study found out in terms of the acceptance phase, although they accept along the way that they are a mistress, this acceptance that they have is very fluid. Ibig sabihin, gumagalaw-galaw pa rin siya. So let's say one day they accept that they are a mistress, but in other days, they will still deny that they are a mistress. So hindi siya nag-i-stay as an acceptance phase. So along the way, palipat-lipat siya sa accepting that they are a mistress, and then later on they will deny it again that they are a mistress. So as you can see here, most mistresses on the interview are experiencing a certain level of conflict within themselves, whether they will accept the fact that they are a mistress or not. Next, for the emotions that they are feeling, ano ba yung mga general emotions that mistresses feel given the setup of their relationships? Number one, lumabas sa themes. Very common yung anxiety, especially when the lover is with the legitimate family. So the anxiety that they feel comes from the idea that they are number two and that the person that they love has their own family. Doon daw madalas lumalabas yung anxiety, when they sense, when they miss their lover, but their lover cannot be with them because they are with the legitimate family. Another emotion very common among mistresses, jealousy. Especially when they are sensing that their lover is spending more time with the legitimate family than with them. So kapag mas maraming oras na ginagamit o mas maraming oras na inilalaan yung partner nila doon sa legitimate na pamilya, doon lumalabas yung kanilang pagkaselos. But fortunately, meron din ditong very positive emotion that they feel being a mistress, and that is a sense of hopefulness. Almost all mistresses that they interviewed mentioned that they are still hoping that one day they will no longer be the mistress. They are still hoping that their lover will leave the legitimate family for them. And according to the group that I handled, this also partially explains why a lot of mistresses, they don't leave the relationship. So kahit alam nila na sila yung number two, nag-i-stay pa rin sila sa relationship kasi umaasa sila that in the future, they will not be number two anymore. So that particular hope of being number one someday is the idea that is making them stay in the relationship. In fact, you can also use this idea of hopefulness in explaining why mistresses can tolerate so much. Bakit sila pumapayag na number 2 lang sila? Bakit sila pumapayag na less time lang yung meron sila? Bakit sila pumapayag na second priority lang sila? Because of that hopefulness that they have. 'Di ba? Kaya nila natitiis yung mga bagay na yon because deep inside them, they are hoping that one day they will now become the legitimate partner and no longer a mistress. Now, how do they cope with all these things that they are undergoing? By analyzing the transcriptions, the following are the themes that emerge. Number 1, they distract themselves a lot. So they do a lot of shopping, cleaning the house, socializing with friends, anything that they can do that will not make them think that they are a mistress or that will prevent them from experiencing the negative emotions of being a mistress, such as yung sinabi natin kanina, jealousy and anxiety. So they do a lot of distractions. Another coping mechanism that they use is emotional sharing, meaning sinasabi nila yung mga negative feelings nila with someone that they really trust. And take note, according to the transcription, the friends to whom they are sharing their feelings with, they are very selective when it comes to these friends. Hindi nila basta-basta kung kani-kanino lang sinishare yung mga feelings nila about being a mistress. Kasi nga, again, we go back to the stigma that the society is labeling the mistresses. Kapag nalaman ng ibang tao, kapag kumalat yung balita that they are a mistress, nako, talagang pwede silang ma-ostracize ng society. So, they become very selective to whom they are going to share these feelings that they have. And based on the data, usually they select their best friends in sharing these feelings. The third bullet, another coping mechanism that they use in becoming a mistress is they use the idea of competition, okay, to pacify themselves that one day they will be number 1. Ibig sabihin ng competition, lagi silang best foot forward when their lover is with them. Ginagalingan nila o parang sinisigurado nila that their lover will have a very positive experience when they are with them. So, gagalingan nila magluto, lagi talaga nilang aalagaan yung lover nila, extra sweet sila sa lover nila, so on and so forth. Again, this behavior can be explained by their hope that in the future, they will no longer be the mistress, they will become number 1. So, parang umaasa sila that by giving their best foot forward, that by being better than the legitimate partner of their lover, one day, this is one way for them to convince their lover to leave the legitimate family and be with them. So, konektado yan, no? Yung sense of competition at saka yung hopefulness nila that in the future, they will no longer be the mistress. So, those are the experiences na pinagdaraanan ng mga mistresses. Diba? I mean, I hope you can see here the beauty of qualitative research. I mean, wala tayong idea na ito pala yung mga pinagdaraanan ng mga mistresses until we are able to have a glimpse of their experiences being a mistress. Pero merong limitation yung qualitative research, no? Given the fact that in qualitative research, we just interview few people. In fact, marami na yung 10 people in a qualitative research. One problem here is generalizability of results. Given all these experiences, we cannot say that all mistresses experience all these things. In fact, mataas yung possibility that maybe we have missed a certain experience. We did not capture a certain experience that some mistresses also experience. Kasi dito, ang in-interview lang natin dito, 10 lang. Diba? Ilang mistresses ba meron sa buong mundo? There are a lot. So, it's still possible that there are certain key experiences of being a mistress that was not captured in the data. That's one common problem in qualitative researches. No, we are not confident in generalizing our conclusions, which is not a problem for quantitative research. Because in quantitative research, it involves a lot of people, it involves random sampling, it involves random assignment. So you are confident to conclude, or you are confident to generalize any conclusion that you discover in doing a quantitative research. Diba? Pwede kang magsabi doon na pwede kang gumawa ng mga general statements from your conclusion kasi yung study mo nga in quantitative research involved many people. But for qualitative research, very few people, that means very low generalizability. Anyway, second research that I would like to present to you na ginamitan ng qualitative research is about retirement, the psychology of retirement. So again, there was a group of students who presented to me this study to talk about the general experience of retiring from a job. Pero in this particular research, they were very specific about athletic retirement. So yung mga in-interview nila dito are people who were once active in sports because they were athletes in that sport and then they chose to retire. So in their methodology, nag-interview sila ng 10 retired professional athletes. Take note, professional athletes. So they did not interview collegiate athletes or amateur athletes. They interviewed professional athletes. Kaya yung mga in-interview nila, maraming mga well-known athletes, no? Pero dahil nga sa principle of confidentiality, hindi dapat ni-reveal. At hindi naman talaga nila ni-reveal yung mga pangalan ng mga athletes na ito. So what are the general experiences of athletes who retire from their sport? The following are the themes that the group was able to generate. Number 1, they discovered that a lot of these athletes has a sense of regret. Marami sa kanila, after they retire, meron silang mga regrets. When they look back, they see their regrets. I should have had. Sana ginawa ko to, sana ginawa ko yan. They are able to think these regrets after they retire. When they already have a lot of time to think, okay, regrets, now they see the regrets that they have in the past. Sana pinagamot ko kaagad yung injury ko, sana ginawa ko to, sana hindi ko inaway si ganitong coach, sana pinakasamahan ko na lang yung ganito kong teammates, so on and so forth. Number 2, these athletes who have retired, they experience mixed emotions between joy and pain. Saan nanggagaling yung joy? Because for the first time in their life, after a long time, they can now use their day the way they want to. Because as you know, being a professional athlete, it will require you to have a very inflexible schedule. 'Di ba? Halos lahat ng ginagawa mo araw-araw as a professional athlete, planadong-planado 'yan eh. 'Di ba? Anong oras ka magte-training, anong oras ka gigising. Sa ganitong oras dapat sa gabi tulog ka na, hindi ka pwede magpuyat. Even your diet, pinapakialaman 'yan. Hindi ka dapat kumain nito, dapat kainin mo 'yan. Their schedule, their lifestyle is very strict. But finally, after they retire, they can now do anything that they like. They can eat anything they like. They can use their time any way they want. Wala na silang mga strict schedules na sinusundan. That is where joy is coming from. Saan naman nanggagaling yung pain na nararanasan nila after the retirement? Well, according to the data, there are 2 kinds of pain that these athletes experience. The first pain is physical pain. Diba? Dito na lumalabas yung mga injuries nila. In fact, a lot of these athletes, one of the reasons why they retired in the first place is because of their injuries. Hindi na kinakaya ng katawan nila, marami na silang mga sakit na nararanasan o nararamdaman. And so after they retire, they are no longer playing their sport. Their body becomes inactive the more they are now feeling these pains that they have. Another form of pain that they encounter during this time is the idea that they can no longer compete. You have to understand that a lot of these professional athletes are very competitive. Mga competitors sila eh. So parang nasa dugo na nila yung makipag-compete. The thing is, after they retire, nawawala na sa buhay nila yung sense of competition. Now, the thing is, they are still craving for it. There are times that they are searching for competition but they can no longer compete because they are already retired. So doon nang gagaling yung isang klase ng pain, the psychological pain of wanting to compete but they can no longer compete because they are already retired. So meron silang mixed feelings. Number 3, another theme that emerged from the data is that athletes who have retired from their sport are reminded of their upcoming mortality. Mas nagiging aware na sila sa mga existential issues tulad ng what comes next. Parang nasa-sense na nila na malapit na mag-end yung buhay nila. They are already in the twilight years of their existence. They are done being young. They are done being professionals. Now that they are retired, they are going towards the last phase of life, which is old age. Because also, a lot of these athletes are also in their middle age years, no? So, naiisip na nila yung mga ganong mga issue. What comes next? After I retire, what's next? After the phase where I retire, what's next? Is there really a God? You know? Ano ba yung purpose ng buhay ko? These are the things that they think about after they retire. And you know, this is also very understandable. Bakit nila naiisip ito? Because they have a lot of time this time to think about these things. These existential questions, they don't ask this during the time that they were still actively playing because of the lack of time. Wala silang time isipin yung mga bagay na yan eh. Pero ngayong retired na sila, ang dami-dami na nilang oras, guess what? They can now afford to think about these things, about their existence. Number 4, another thing that emerged from the data is that the researchers realized that the process of accepting the fact that they are already retired is not an easy task. Hindi siya basta-basta na nag-decide yung athlete, retired na siya, and then they live happily ever after. In fact, a lot of athletes during retirement, they are struggling emotionally. They are experiencing conflicting emotions. One part of them still wants to play. They want to come back to their sport, but another part of them wants to stay retired. So every day they have to experience that battle within themselves. Am I going to stay here being retired, or am I going to go back to the sport that I love so much? In fact, majority of the athletes that my students interviewed are still thinking to have a comeback to their sport. Marami sa kanila, merong pang parte ng sarili nila, gusto pang maglaro ulit doon sa sport na iniwan nila. And that particular conflict that they are having during retirement is what's making acceptance easy. Or hard pala. It's what making acceptance really hard for them to do. So it's not an easy task. Number 5, because of the retirement that they did, now it becomes more clear to them that their self has two versions. Meron silang on-court self, meron din silang off-court self. Now they can differentiate. Now they can see for the first time in their life na yung ugali nila off-court ibang-iba sa on-court. They can now see certain talents, certain skills, certain attributes, certain personalities that they show outside the court that they don't show when they are inside the court. Diba? And they spend a lot of their times during their retirement years in getting to know their off-court self. Marami silang mga bagong discoveries about themselves that they never realized while they were still actively playing. So, yun, generally nakikita nila na iba pala sila kapag nasa court sila, kapag athlete pa sila, compared to nung retired na sila. Okay? So those are the things, those are the general experiences na nararanasan ng isang athlete who have chosen to retire from the sport that he or she played. For the last sample study in qualitative research, let's talk about the psychology of fame. In this study, the question was, what experiences comes with being famous? Paano ba maging sikat? Ano ba yung mga general experiences ng mga taong sikat? But this study, it is no longer done by my former students, but this is based on a journal article entitled Being a Celebrity, a Phenomenology of Fame. This was written by Donna Rockwell and David Giles. Sila yung mga authors, no? So, ang ginawa nila dito, nag-interview sila ng mga 15 adults who are very famous. They are so famous that they are identifiable in the public eye. So, mga big time na mga celebrities ito. Each of these 15 people, when they go out to the public, people can recognize them. So again, because of confidentiality, the authors did not mention the names of these people, but in the journal article where this came from, they have given some of the profiles of these 15 famous adults that they interviewed. Meron silang TV star, meron silang TV news personality, one state governor, Hollywood actor, NBA athlete, famous CEO, and an R&B superstar. So mga big time na mga tao ito. Talagang yung mga taong ito are considered very famous in their respective fields. So in their interview, their questions simply revolve around the following core questions. What is the experience of being famous? What is your first memory of being famous? Have you lost or gained anything as a result of being famous? So these are the questions that they gave their participants. And then again, they transcribed their responses, and then they spotted general themes that exist from their transcription. So, ano ba yung mga general experiences ng mga sikat? Okay, let's talk about this. Number one, the authors realized that fame has stages. Yung pagiging sikat pala ng isang tao, meron silang mga phases na pinagdaraanan from stage 1 to stage 4. Stage 1 is called the mix of love and hate. Ibig sabihin, nung bago-bago pa lang silang sikat, they have mixed feelings about being that famous. Nasaan yung love doon? Why do they love being famous? Because it feels good to be famous. People recognize you, people value you, 'di ba? Kapag lumalabas ka sa streets, people are very warm to you simply because you are famous. Pero yung hate na feeling, saan nanggagaling yan? Merong mga bagay in their life that they can no longer do simply because they are already famous. We will talk about that as we go along. Stage 2. A lot of them, dumaan sila sa phase where they get addicted to their fame. In fact, a lot of them one of their anxiety is they don't like to lose their fame. Marami sa kanila yun ang takot nila sa buhay, no, yung mawala na sila sa kasikatan, because they get addicted to the lifestyle of being famous. They always like people recognizing them. They always like people praising them. They always like being invited in different TV shows. They get addicted to that kind of life, to that state of life. But deep inside, they know that this will not last. Along the way, that particular fame, mawawala at mawawala rin yan. Alright? Stage 3 is called the acceptance phase. In the acceptance phase, dalawa ang ina-accept nila dyan. Number 1, they accept the fact that they are no longer the same person as they were before they were famous. Tinatanggap na nila yun na nag-iibang tao na sila. Hindi na sila yung simpleng tao before they get famous. The second thing that they accept here is they now accept the fact that their fame will not last forever. So nare-realize na rin naman nila yon, natatanggap na nila yon na yung kasikatan nila hindi siya magla-last forever. And lastly, stage 4, adaptation. Now that they have a new lifestyle, now that they have a new identity, ang ginagawa nila sa stage 4, they are now developing new behaviors, new lifestyle things that they have never done before. Kung baga parang nag-a-adjust na rin sila sa kanilang bagong estado sa buhay. Ina-adjust na rin nila yung kanilang mga expectations, no? So, ina-expect nila na kahit saan sila pumunta, wala silang privacy. Ina-expect nila na lahat ng gagawin nila pwedeng ma-criticize ng ibang tao because they are now a public figure. Okay? Even their spending habits, nag-iiba na rin, no? Dati-rate, if you compare their spending habits before they were famous, it is very different from the way they spend their money now that they are famous. Isa yan sa talagang nag-iiba. Mas nagiging magastos yung kanilang lifestyle after they have become famous. Okay, so these are the different stages that famous people undergo. Number 2, another theme that emerged from their interview is a lot of these celebrities feel that they have lost their privacy or their ownership of their life. In fact, marami sa kanila feeling nila hindi na nila hawak yung buhay nila, but their life is an open book. Their life is for public consumption. So in a way, they have lost the sense, they have lost the sense of privacy. Feeling nila hindi na sila pwedeng maging private ever in their life. Okay, because of their high levels of fame. And this is now in connection to number 1, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, connected ito doon sa feeling of hate nila doon sa kanilang fame. So one of the reasons why they hate being famous is because of number two. They have lost ownership of their life. Feeling nila they don't have 100% control of their life. Everything they do must depend on what others will say or what other people will expect. So for example, ito, basahin ko lang yung isang excerpt from the interview that reflects this theme. It changes my whole persona and way of being when I am out in public. When I am walking into the building, into my office, people are like, "Oh my God, there's Howard." Pinalitan ko lang yung pangalan, no? I used to want to turn and wave and say hi to people, but now sometimes it gets too much and very intrusive. So meron silang mga ganyang naiirita sila na yung mga tao lagi na lang lapit ng lapit sa kanila, you know? Kumbaga parang yan yung difficult side of being famous. Number three, this is also very interesting. Another key experience that famous people have is that they develop a certain level of mistrust towards people. Mahirap na silang magtiwala sa mga tao na nakapaligid sa kanila because they are so famous. Almost all people like them. So nakakapagduda, sino ba dito sa mga taong ito na malapit sa akin yung gusto ako for who I am? Okay? Because it's always a possibility that people are just nice to you simply because they need something from you or sumasakay lang sila sa kasikatan mo. So they always doubt the intentions of people who are being nice to them. Okay? So yan yung tinatawag nating mistrust. Napakataas na ng standard nila before they consider someone as their friend. Number 4, a lot of these famous people also experience a certain sense of power. So with fame, with the money that they have, with the recognition that people give them, meron din kasamang power na nabubuo sa kanilang identity. And a lot of times, they are faced in certain situations where they are capable of transcending rules and regulations. They are capable of transcending the legality of the law simply because they are famous. Isa yan sa mga perks ng pagiging sikat. Merong exception sa kanila simply because they are famous. One excerpt from their interview that shows this would be this one. Sabi nung isang sikat dito, "When I get stopped by the police, I am going too fast, I roll the window down." So, traffic violation ito, no? I give them my license. Tapos, pag makita nung police yung lisensya at nakilala siya, na sikat na tao siya, they say, "Oh, could you give me an autograph for my son?" I say, "Absolutely." Sign the autograph and just say, "Be careful," and I go on my way. So, in this situation, naipakita kung paano sila nagiging powerful in such a way na they can transcend certain laws. Hindi na sila tinikitan, hindi na sila hinuli because the police recognize him or recognize her to be a very popular person. And based on the interviews, marami pang mga instances where famous people have felt this. They have felt very powerful and they have used their power of fame to transcend certain rules and regulation. 'Di ba sa Pilipinas ang tawag natin diyan mga VIP treatment. 'Di ba when people treat them in a VIP way, they feel a certain sense of power. And last one, number 5, another important theme that emerged from their interview is that a lot of these famous people feel a sense of giving back. Dahil sa dami ng natatanggap nila, dahil sa dami ng recognition that people give them, a part of themselves feel that they need to give back to these people who helped them to be famous. Kasi totoo naman talaga, if you come to think of it, hindi ka magiging sikat kung hindi dahil sa ibang tao. And so, in a way, you owe it to these people why you are enjoying your life right now. And so, that feeling of they owe something to people makes them give back to these people. Diba? So marami silang mga ginagawa to give back to the people. They spend more time with their fans. Nagkakaroon sila ng mga fundraising activities. Minsan namimigay sila ng mga lumang gamit nila sa mga staff nila. All of these things again are done to satisfy their desire of giving back to people who they think they owe something. So, yan yung mga experiences ng mga taong sikat. No, again, hindi natin na alam before we read this research, hindi natin alam what it's like to be famous. But because we read this qualitative research, now we have an idea of what it's like to be famous. In the future, for example, magiging sikat ka, halimbawa naging sikat ka, 'di ba? You know what to expect. You know what changes will happen now that you are famous because you have read this study before. But then again, tulad nga na sinabi ko kanina in the first qualitative research study na presenta ko sa inyo, one problem here is generalizability. Okay? Although these 5 themes make sense that famous people experience these things, it is still possible that there are certain experiences that our data did not capture because these are only based on 15 popular people. Ilang famous people ba meron sa buong mundo? 'Di ba? 15 is too small of a number to be confident that all famous people experience all these things. Okay? Anyway, so to formally close our lecture video, in the past videos I have presented to you how quantitative research and how qualitative research differs from each other and how they differ in the way we execute the research. So just to summarize, qualitative research and quantitative research, this is their difference. Marami silang pagkakaiba. The way you do the research, the questions that you ask, the way you gather data, what kind of data you are going to gather, magkaiba between qualitative and quantitative research. And so I hope this series of videos really develop in you the awareness and I hope the ability to differentiate researches that are quantitative and researches that are qualitative. Regarding your post-lecture task, meron akong ipapagawa sa inyo, no? I am going to ask you to formulate questions that are qualitative and that are quantitative. And this post-lecture task that you are going after this lecture video, we are going to use this task to help you formulate your final project comes January. So, importante na tapusin nyo itong post-lecture task na ito, no? Kasi yung post-lecture task na ito, this is like the foundation of what we are going to do comes January next year going towards your final project. So, I hope you understand this lecture video. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to post a comment below the description box or you can just email me via Animo Space. Thank you for listening and God bless.